And so the universe is the way it is because astronomers are here to measure it, is the argument. And it sounds funny, but it's actually maybe true. It's something called the anthropic principle, but if it's true, it means this fundamental constant in nature is an accident. And there may be many universes in which that number is different. But in those universes, there aren't people around or beings around, perhaps, to ask the question. So it addresses one of the fundamental aspects of the question of why is there something rather than nothing is, if there were nothing, we wouldn't be here to ask the question.
I've always been very attracted by the anthropic principle. I think it's elegant and neat. I know physicists hate it, but I think you probably, in order to make it explanatory, give it explanatory power, you do need to postulate lots of universes, don't you?
You need to postulate universes, but you need to postulate more than just that. First of all, the anthropic principle, one of the things, it's often been proposed in physics, always when there's something inexplicable. And historically, at least, throughout the last century, there have been a number of times in the evolution of stars it looked like the parameters of physics had to be fine-tuned so you can make carbon and get, beyond helium. And it looked like, well, that has to be fine-tuned, and maybe it's anthropic. Maybe it's just a number that, if it were any different, we wouldn't be here. But every time that's happened, we've actually come up with a fundamental theory that explains it. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to happen this time. But the anthropic principle, in order to be predicted, you have to assume many universes. But you have to assume that you know the probability distribution for the parameters. Otherwise, you can't predict the likelihood that we'll be here. And you have to know which parameters are fixed by fundamental laws and which ones can vary, and we don't know that. And the other thing that it really assumes, which is really not at all clear, and it comes back to biology, is that we are typical. Because if we're not typical, it could be, we don't know the varieties of life that can exist. And it could be if the laws of nature were very different. You wouldn't form stars, you wouldn't form planets, but we don't know that you wouldn't form life. So you have to assume for the anthropic principle to be operational, that we are typical of life forms in the universe, and that is an incredible assumption that I think is not at this point warranted. So that's my big problem with the anthropic principle, that we don't know in any sense that we're typical. And in fact, I've argued with my colleagues that if you use that typicality argument, we'd be having this discussion underwater. Because most of the Earth is covered in water. And if you ask where should intelligent life naturally arise, it should be in water. Because that's more probable. And so we're certainly not, at least the kind of life that can carry on this conversation doesn't exist in water. Whether there's intelligence in dolphins or others is something to be discovered. And so there are a lot of hidden assumptions, and the problem is it's hard to test them unless you have many different examples of life, or in some cases, unless you have many universes. And when it comes to cosmology, unlike potentially, with biology, we're suffering for the fact that we only know of life on Earth. And therefore, we make lots of speculations about the kind of life that might exist. In physics, in cosmology, we have a much bigger problem. We live in one universe. Well, most of us do. Again, except for Republicans. And that means we may forever have limits on our knowledge. And one of the things I try and talk about in my book, and one of the things that fascinates me, is we have made such progress that we may be pushing up against those limits right now. There may be fundamental scientific questions that we don't know the answer to, that we never can get an empirical answer to, because we're stuck either living 13.7 billion years after the Big Bang, and maybe if we lived earlier or later, we would have access to information we don't have, because we can talk about the fact that in the future there'll be much less information. Or the fact that we just live in one universe and we can't access the locus of all possible universes. And
one of the things that fascinated me about your book is this idea that we live, as you put it, in a very propitious time. Because if we lived, I don't know, a trillion years later, the universe would have deleted all traces of its origins, of its progenitors that we can detect, because we happen to be living at this time when light can still reach us from other galaxies, whereas if we lived in a trillion years' time, the galaxies would have receded beyond the horizon where we could detect them. And we would have absolutely no evidence of any kind that there was more than one galaxy, for example.
I find it very poetic. In fact, what you find in a trillion years in the future is that we go back to the picture we had merely 100 years ago. And that's one of the other reasons to write a book like this at this time, is that It is amazing. We're like the early map makers. It is amazing in a single human lifetime how much things have changed. It's hard to appreciate it. 85 years ago, 85 years ago, a single human lifetime, easily, we knew of one galaxy in the universe. That was it. The conventional scientific wisdom was that our Milky Way was the entire universe. We now know there are 400 billion galaxies in the universe. 85 years ago, the universe was static and eternal as far as scientists were concerned. So their picture of the universe was that we lived in a single galaxy surrounded by an eternity of empty space that had always been that way and always would be that way. And everything changed. Of course, we discovered the universe had a beginning, which had profound significance for science and for theology, as we may talk about. And if you go in the far future, what is kind of remarkable to me is that beings who live on what will be the Milky Way galaxy, because we're going to collide with our neighbors and we'll form some big, not a nice spiral galaxy, but probably something called an elliptical galaxy. But there'll be stars around in 2 trillion years, stars like our sun, that therefore have solar power, and there'll be organic molecules, and there'll be planets around them, and therefore you could imagine life forming around those stars. But astronomers who will discover the laws of physics, they'll discover general relativity, they'll discover electromagnetism, they'll discover quantum mechanics, and they'll do the best experiments they can do. They'll build telescopes, and they'll come up with a picture which is completely wrong. They'll come up with a picture which is identical to the picture we had.
Just one galaxy on that.
So we are lucky, and in fact, I like to say we live in we're fortunate to live in a very special time. The only time when we can know we're living in a very special time. And but by that I mean I'm facetious, because we have this picture which is weird, but it may not be complete. It could be that those beings living 100 billion or trillion years from now will have access to observational information of some sort that we don't have today. And so we should have some kind of cosmic humility, which is very difficult to
let me come on to the I want to ask you about the very title of your book, the idea of something from nothing. You are telling us that matter arose spontaneously out of nothing, which I find an immensely exciting idea, but many people will find it mind-boggling.
Mind-boggling and offensive. I think maybe not as offensive.
That was offensive, but no, mind-boggling.
No. Well, you're not offended, but check my email. It amazes me because the purpose of the book, to some extent, is to say something remarkable. And you were kind enough afterward to point out the analogy to Darwin, and I'm pretentious to make it, perhaps, but the physicist Steven Weinberg said, science doesn't make it impossible to believe in God. It just makes it possible to not believe in God. Because until you have science, everything's a miracle. And what Darwin showed, as you said at the beginning of our discussion, is this miracle is actually plausible from basic principles of physics, chemistry, biology. That you can produce us without a creator, without an intelligence. And what we've learned is remarkably this question, which is in the sense of cosmology, in my mind, the last bastion of those people who feel there must be a creator, is the fact that it is plausible, based on everything we now know, that a universe could come from nothing. Now, that doesn't mean it did come from nothing any more than Darwin's argument implied that life absolutely originated by chemistry. We don't know that yet. Discoveries in physics and cosmology have led us to realize it's increasingly plausible, and I find that remarkable and worth celebrating. And one of the examples of that, and there's a number of them, maybe some of them are too much for us to talk about tonight, is this remarkable fact that nothing is unstable. That empty space is unstable. The laws of quantum mechanics, combined with gravity, will tell you that if you have empty space there, and you wait long enough, particles will be created. And if you wait long enough, empty space will always produce a universe full of matter. And it's not a scam. There's no violation of energy conservation. It's from the fact that gravity can have negative energy as well as positive energy. And so nothing is unstable. And in fact, that's the first answer why there's something rather than nothing, is that nothing's unstable. The big surprise would be if there was nothing. Now the problem, of course, of saying that is people say, that's not nothing. That's not, and it's an interesting problem, because when I've discussed this with theologians and philosophers, some of them, And yes, what's nothing? And my argument is that these are scientific questions, not philosophical or theological ones. And I think the nothing that Aristotle would have had, or Thomas Aquinas, or any of the people who first asked why is there something out of nothing, that nothing would have been an eternal empty void, namely empty space. But once I argue that empty space can create something, then immediately I'm told that's not nothing. And then I show that space itself can be created from nothing, and then I'm told that's not nothing. And then I say, well, and because there are still laws of physics, and then I argue that in fact the laws of physics, for the reasons we've discussed, the anthropic principle, there may be many universes, and it's quite likely that even the laws of physics themselves arose by accident when the universe was created. So even the laws aren't there. And I'm told that's not nothing. And the definition of theologians, I think, for nothing is that from which only God can create something. And I find that sort of content-free. Although I guess I think I say in the book that maybe I'm not fit to talk about nothing because theologians and philosophers are experts in nothing.
I've been accustomed to the idea that pushing back from biology into physics, you get back to a zone where we don't understand, and you get back to a zone where there's not nothing but sort of a primeval simplicity. What I learned from your book, which I find stunningly exciting, is that it is literally nothing. I mean, that's what really, and as you say, even the laws of physics.
And space, space, you can create a universe where there's no space before.
Yeah. So I do find that it's sort of mind-numbing in a way, because it's pushing the Darwinian dream to an extreme, which biologists couldn't have been there.
I think in a sense it is, and it's fascinating to me that we're beginning to get there, and I think that's worth sharing. We don't have the conclusions, and we don't have a dogmatic conclusion, but we'll get back to the fact that it amazes me, and I think you find the same thing, because I know what I've read about you, by people who disagree with you, is if you say this is possible, then you're suddenly told that you're shrill and dogmatic. But we'll get there. But before we do, I mean, one of the things that we just talked about is this, it's how amazing this really is. And I want to turn back to you, just talk about my book, but you just wrote a book called The Magic of Reality, which is ostensibly supposed to be for children. I wanted, if you could talk about why you wrote it and why you think it's important.
Well, any scientific book that's important is worth writing for children because they're the future, and as is often said, the sort of natural born scientists in any case. So I've always wanted to write a children's book, but actually I like to think that it's readable, it's understandable by adults as well.
In fact, I would argue, I often say if the children understand, there's a possibility the adults understand it. But in fact, I wrote a blurb for the back of the book, and I really think actually, while it is its principle, called a children's book, it actually addresses the very questions that not just children, but adults have. Maybe you can the questions.
I haven't attempted to answer these very profound questions we've been talking about, which belong in the field of modern physics, 20th century, 21st century physics. I haven't tackled that at all. The physics that's in The Magic of Reality is 19th century physics.
But most people don't know 19th century.
That's right.
I think it's I mean, I don't want to do a disservice to people, because you can get along in life apparently without knowing it. But to be able to deal with those basic concepts without being patronizing, and I think the book is a good one. I think it makes it accessible and it is with adults.
I mean, it's questions like why do we have winter and summer, why do we have night and day? I mean, even questions like why do we have winter and summer, it's amazing how many people think the reason we have winter is that's when the earth is furthest away from the sun.
I was going to ask the question.
Oh, you might
okay. No, it's all right. We've already given enough. But
okay.
But
I mean, I haven't. It's just if there are any Australians present, they
would know the difference.
Yeah.
In fact, studies have shown if you ask that question, the majority of people will say in summer the earth is closer to the sun than in winter.
Whereas an Australian will say Northern Hemisphere chauvinism.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the tilt of the earth, and it's described there. But when you were writing with kids in mind, did it change the way you wrote compared to when you were?
I think just a bit of restriction of vocabulary. I like to when writing for adults use the full vocabulary at my disposal. And I think it's fun to, we have a beautiful instrument in the English language, and I think we should use it to the full. But when writing for children, I would tend to avoid using words that too many words that need to be looked up in a dictionary. I mean, there's no harm in looking words up in a dictionary, and we should all do it from time to time, but you don't have to look up too many. So that's really the only restriction.
That was the only restriction. Otherwise, you
Yes.
didn't find your writing style changed at all.
I don't think so, no. No.
Yeah, I didn't notice it when I read the book, and I was wondering if there was any conscious thought in your mind. Now, this allows us to segue to something which we would be remiss if we did not discuss, which is religion, and science and religion in some sense. I would suggest that one of the reasons that it's really important to teach kids about science is that they're often they're brainwashed from a young age with other ideas. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Maybe the fact that
Yes, I mean, I think that is absolutely true. And when we talked about this astronomer who thinks the world is 6,000 years old, and one knows that many other people who think that, that is so ludicrous. That's got to be due to childhood indoctrination. There's no other, I think, reasonable explanation. And I think it is a tragic abuse of childhood. I don't abuse of children, but abuse of childhood to fill a child's mind, to fill a child's mind with what are now known to be falsehoods, just because they have some kind of historic origin.
Before we get to that, I want to touch on whether science is incompatible with review and why, and I'll talk about my opinion on that too. But one of the things that you set out, well, we both enjoy teaching science, and we want it, and one of my goals and your goals is to help people understand science. But I think it's fair to say that one of your purposes of doing that is to destroy religion, is it not?
Well, I love truth. I love scientific truth. In my own field of biology, ever since Darwin, we've got a very, very long way towards understanding it. And I'm now learning that in your field, we're coming stunningly close to understanding it. And that is such a beautiful idea, such a wonderful, exciting, exhilarating idea, that it is, I would go as far as to say, an obscenity to fill a child's mind with a parochial, small-minded, petty, medieval alternative, which has nothing going for it whatever.
It sounds like we're preaching with the converted, but I bet in the question period
what was that quote from Stephen Weinberg that you just...
Science doesn't make it impossible to believe in God, it just makes it possible to not believe.
Yeah, I think that's too weak. In the following sense, that it doesn't just make God redundant, it doesn't just give God nothing to do, which it certainly does. I mean, biology, ever since Darwin, has left God nothing to do. And it now sounds as though physics is doing the same thing. But a God who has nothing to do is still a complex, improbable entity of exactly the kind that we spent our lives explaining. So the whole Darwinian enterprise and the whole enterprise that you're engaged in physics is to explain how we can get to things like gods and explain them. And so if you suddenly then import a god at the beginning of the universe, that's a betrayal of the entire scientific enterprise. It's not just that God is necessary. God expresses a carbuncle on the face of science.
Well, okay, in fact, I agree with it. Actually, we were talking earlier, I think it's even stronger than that, in some sense. God is not, in order for God to do everything God is purported to do, God has to be much more complex than we are. In fact, you're imagining a being of incredible complexity, in fact, in religion, unfathomable complexity. And you're just positing it by fiat. But you're saying that the complexity of the regular complexity that you or I can't be made by natural processes, and you're postulating that this pre-existence of something that's far more complex than we are.
Precisely. I mean, that's exactly right. And not only does God have to be a master physicist at its own, he's got to be in telepathic communication with everybody praying to him. He's got to know all our sins. He's got to forgive us if he feels like it. He's got to cure people of cancer if he's asked to. I mean, all those sorts of things which are simply adding to the problem. So I think the Weinberg quote that you gave is just too deep. I think we can get
At the same time, and I think one has to be careful. But even here, and I should say that our views have come together a lot more. If you listened to us 5 years ago, we were more divergent, I think. And I like to think I convinced you, but no. But that it's worked both ways. I can definitely say. But one can say, I think it's important to say that we cannot. And I try and say this. Look, I can't prove at a deistic level. Or even a theistic level, where you say, well, maybe there is some intelligence that caused it all to happen. I can't prove that. What I can say is there's absolutely no evidence of it. That I can say as a scientist. But I can't really say that I can prove, therefore, by lack of evidence, you can't prove it in the negative. But nevertheless, that's not the same as saying, people say, well, therefore, God can't prove the existence of God. But that kind of God has nothing to do with the God of Judaism or Christianity or Islam. It's a personal God, has nothing to do with that. It's a giant leap of illogic to go from that kind of God to a God that cares about us. And so I'm always amazed that people, even in the case of cosmology, saying, well, there's room for God at the beginning of the universe, somehow say that must mean that Jesus Christ
died for our sins.
Yeah, there's no logical connection between those two.
No, but I mean, I've been caught out with this before. I said something similar to what you said, and I said, well, of course, maybe there could be a deistic God, but that's very, very different from the God of the Christians or the Jews. And I've been pounced on later. Dawkins believes in a deistic God, and that's really happened to me. And so I want to reiterate what I said about the Weinberg quote. Not only you cannot, of course, disprove a deistic God any more than you could disprove leprechauns and but you can say something much stronger than that, which is that even a deistic God would still have to be exactly the kind of thing that we spend our lives explaining, and have gone a long way towards intelligence. God, like anything else, intelligence comes linked in the universe. Intelligence comes at the end of a long process of evolution.
I'm not through the end.
No, I didn't mean the end. Intelligence comes after a long period of development, of evolution, starting from literally nothing, as we've now learned, and then chemistry takes over, biology takes over. And so there may be in the universe godlike beings. There probably are life forms which are so much more advanced than us that if we were to meet them, we would fall to our knees and worship them. But they would still be the product of a process, explicable process of evolutionary development. They would not be gods in the sense of having created the laws of physics or created the universe or created life or something of that sort.
Okay, and I think, that's true, and there's another stronger thing I think one could say. When people ask me as an atheist, as a scientist, you're not certain of anything. There are things that are probable and things that are improbable. And what you can do is you can say, I can say, looking at the universe, that I can't say that there's no God, but I can say the universe, it looks just like a universe that would be created without one. And moreover, that just like I can't say, using Bertrand Russell's famous analogy of a China teapot, I can't prove that there's no teapot orbiting Jupiter. But what I can say is it's extremely improbable. And so what I can say about the universe is that I can't say that there isn't a God, but I can say that everything we know makes it, for me, as a scientist, extremely improbable. And so that doesn't, you may say that doesn't make me an atheist, but in fact, I would argue that I'm not. Our dear friend, our late friend, Christopher Hitchens, I would call myself what he said. I'm an anti-theist. Namely, I can't prove that there's no God. I just wouldn't want to live in a universe with him. And that's my. And I'm up, I'm upfront about that comment. I wouldn't want to live what he's wrongly saying in this stuff.
That's right. I mean, Christopher Hitchens' reason for that was a sort of political one, that living in the universe with a God would be like living with a divine hymnal song. I mean,
exactly. It doesn't put you in jail for a year, but for eternity, for doing the silliest thing.
So his was a moral reason, which I respect. But mine would be a scientific reason. I wouldn't wish to. If there were a God which undermined the whole scientific enterprise, then science would be pointless. There would be no point doing science if there's a sort of magician deciding what's going to happen and changing the laws of physics at will, inventing them. I'm glad to say there's no evidence.
Okay, I want to get near the end here because we started late and we're going to go for about 4 or 5 more minutes and then we're going to take a break for 20. But I don't think we've offended enough people. So let's go a little further because I know we've had this discussion. And let's talk about religion and politics. Because in this... Because you said something to me which I think is going to shock a lot of people here, and I think it's worth discussing. We both agreed that the astronomer shouldn't be teaching astronomy when they have personal beliefs which are idiotic. And the doctor shouldn't be a doctor when they have personal beliefs that are idiotic. Now I know basically you have argued to me, and I think we should have that discussion about whether that applies to politicians and particularly some of the politicians that are running for president.
Well, I find myself in a difficult position because I'm kind of aware in America, and I'm not American as you can tell, that the separation of church and state is deeply ingrained in the American politics, and rightly so. And John Kennedy, when challenged on his Catholicism, rightly said it was a separate matter, and as long as I don't bring my Catholicism into policy, you've nothing to complain about. And this is very, very, very laudable. But going back to the doctor, the hypothetical doctor, and the astronomer, if you knew that one of the candidates that you're contemplating voting for believed that in the 19th century a man called Joseph Smith dug up some golden tablets which he translated and then conveniently lost, and translated moreover, although a 19th century man translated them into 17th century English, and lots and lots of other...
And more importantly, unlike some of the... I mean, we also agree that the biblical stories are equally ridiculous, but the difference is we don't know they were written by known con men, but in fact he was a known felon.
Yes, that's exactly true. And so if the person you're contemplating voting for believes all that, believes that the Garden of Eden was in Missouri, believes that Native Americans are the lost 10 tribes of Israel, believes that Jesus visited North America. I mean, these beliefs are barking mad. They contradict everything that's known historically, archaeologically. They contradict science. They contradict history. Now, is it a fair defense for such a candidate to say, oh, well, don't worry, I won't let my beliefs interfere with my policies? Well, maybe he won't, but do you want to vote for somebody who's capable of holding in his head such unrealistic nonsense? And do you want a president who believes palpably foolish things, even if he promises that he won't actually let them? It's back to the problem of the doctor and the astronomer again.
So, in case we're not being clear enough, is religion fair game when journalists question?
Okay, that's the point. In my view, and it's not a popular view in America, my view is that a candidate's religious beliefs are fair game for journalists to ask questions and for debaters. When candidates are having a debate, it seems to me to be absolutely reasonable to say to a candidate, do you believe so and so? I mean, I would be prepared to say to a Catholic such as John Kennedy, do you actually believe that the bread actually turns into the body of Christ?
Yeah, no, in fact, I was on a stage with several members of the Vatican, and I asked if they believed in the virgin birth, and I couldn't get an answer from them, which amazed me. I mean, because in fact, I think we both agree that most people what people want to do is they want to believe, to take a line from the X-Files, they want to believe in believing. And so most people who of faith, I think, in our society, naturally pick and choose from the doctrine those things they find absolutely ridiculous and throw out. Yeah. And the question is, and the Pope would say that's not palatable, and I would tend to agree with the Pope. I think if you can't believe some of the stuff and you need to throw it out, just forget the whole thing. Yeah.
That would be my view, and I suspect that well, there are 535 members of the U.S. Congress, and one has said that he doesn't believe in the supreme being. That's statistically not possible. I mean, a fair number of those members of Congress presumably have had some sort of education.
It's so obvious.
Not all, but a good number. There have got to be a very substantial number of atheistic members of the United States Congress, probably more than a couple of hundred would be my guess, and yet they cannot admit it. So in order to get elected, you've got to lie about your beliefs.
And I think that's right, and I think it's good to call them on it in one sense. I disagree with you slightly, maybe because I spent a lot more time in this country. And I would say, another friend of mine, Noam Chomsky, who I asked about this, said, I don't care what people believe, it's what they do that's important. And to some extent I agree, but my point is, if people don't hold the religion on their sleeve, so it's obviously not relevant, like Lincoln, okay, then it's not relevant to them, then it's not relevant, then it's not in the public domain, and journalists needn't ask questions about it. But if they do hold the religion on their sleeve, then it becomes in the public domain, and it becomes appropriate for journalists to bring it up. So because then it's an action. They're saying, elect me because I'm a person of faith, not because I believe that we need to improve the economy or this or that. So that becomes their action in the process of an election, and then it becomes a legitimate target, in my opinion, for journalists, and they shouldn't show mercy.
No, I mean, I think that's almost obvious, but I'm really coming back to the nub of the question, which is that even if they don't take any action based upon it, I mean, would you, going back to the doctor, an extreme example which I actually published on a blog somewhere, was a hypothetical doctor who doesn't believe in the sex theory of reproduction, believes in the stork theory of reproduction. I thought I was pushing to the limit. I assumed that everybody would agree with me, at least here, that you would not wish to consult such a doctor. Not a bit of it. I was kicked around the room on this American blog. The doctor's private beliefs are his private beliefs. They're no business of yours, so long as he can take your appendix out or whatever he has to do, then it doesn't matter that he doesn't believe in sex, even if he knows that's where they're disagreeing.
Well, I guess because the discourse theory is relevant to his career as a
well,
lawyer.
I have to say, an eye doctor.
I have to say, for a politician, if I think there are rights to privacy. I think if someone believes that it's okay for them to have sex with animals, I shouldn't ask that question as long as they don't make it a campaign platform. And so I happen to think that there is some right to privacy in the sense that if you don't wear it on your sleeve, and these candidates do wear it on the sleeve, including, by the way, Obama, who was just talking about poverty because of Jesus the other day. And I think once you bring that up, then it becomes fair game. Now, let's end with, because you pointed out that there's one member of Congress, and I didn't know there were that many, who argues that he doesn't believe in a supreme being. I just wrote an article about a study that's been done by a group of psychologists in Canada and the United States. It's just been published. That asks what groups people distrust. And it turns out the group that is distrusted the most are atheists. Well, they're not quite the most. They're on par with rapists. And I wonder if you could comment.
Well, that seems to me to be an adequate explanation for why so many members of the United States Congress are obviously lying about their private beliefs. I mean, if you're on a par with rapists, then
It doesn't seem to stop them.
I mean,
Congress people, anyway.
I suspect that we've already had in this country quite a number of atheist presidents. I suspect.
Thomas Jefferson probably.
Yes, well, in the 18th century, that was before Darwin, it was a little bit harder.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't surprise me in the least if Kennedy was an atheist. It wouldn't surprise me if Clinton was an atheist. It wouldn't surprise me if Obama's an atheist. But you cannot admit it, or you simply don't get elected. I would like to start a campaign for what they call lame duck presidents and senators and people to say, okay, I'm not standing for election anymore. I'm an atheist. I've been an atheist all along.
Well, that probably is a good place to get close to stopping, because I will say that one of the things that impacted upon me the most in our discussions and listening to you is the notion that we need to consciousness raise, so at least the question, just questioning the existence of a deity, doesn't become akin in our society to being someone you don't trust. That just questioning, which is really the basis of science, which is the basis of progress, should be something we revere rather than revile. And so, I applaud the efforts that you have made to raise people's consciousness, including my own. And I'll give the final example. One that I think I heard on this stage the first time you might have talked here was a wonderful example that is worth repeating, which is a picture at Christmas time of three children and three little kids. And one of them, and it says, and they're all playing together in this play, and one it says,
well, they're the three wise men in the passion in the nativity play.
And it says this one's a Muslim child, and this one's a Christian child, and I don't know if one's a Jewish child. And then you point out, how dare we say a Muslim child? Why not say
4 years old?
A libertarian child, or a neoconservative child,
a postmodernist child.
So I think we need to, and one of the ways to do that, I think, is have frank discussions about issues that we're often afraid to discuss in public, and I'm happy that we were able to do it here. So thank you very much. We'll go for it now. Richard, come on back out for applause. Richard, come on back out.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Ron Woodworth. I finished my graduate studies at Arizona State University. I did my doctorate in religious studies at Trinity Seminary. So I really enjoy the opportunity to come in and hear you, Dr. Dawkins, the study of the laws, and Lawrence, this is my first time I've heard you, but thank you for your sharing as well. My main argument or critique.
You have a question?
Yes, this is it, and it's based upon my main critique.
Okay.
My main critique is I don't think that it's necessary to join together a scientific inquiry, regardless of how speculative or dramatic it may be, with an atheistic proposition. I'm not a scientist. I know several scientists. I've interviewed them from here and elsewhere, as you have. And here's my observation. As long as scientific inquiry is possible, which would be as long as matter exists, there can never be ultimate proof of God's non-existence. And I think, Dr. Lawrence, you were making that observation a little bit more, but I just want to end it with this little statement, and this is Hebrews 11:2. Believe it or not.
Well, okay. I think it may